Hello YouTubers again, it's me Aussie C. Sorry for the big break in videos of recent. They've dropped off, I'll admit, but it has been mega busy of recent. Just so many gigs, so much work, so I've had to be leaving off them a bit, but now I've got a bit of time and I've had a few motivations, and I hope you all had a good Christmas and New Year, by the way, and it was very enjoyable, and that my New Year's message from the side of the M25 meant something to someone. The topic for today was actually instigated by a friend of mine. Let's just call him Jim for now. It was something that I'd heard on the radio about equality, and it was equality in the workplace. And it's not strictly about equality in the workplace, this one, but it's integrating various other parts of equality as well, and human rights as well. And what it focused on was on the radio late one night, driving in the van, maybe 4 o'clock in the morning, get various programs on Radio 4, because it's the only channel we can receive in the van. It doesn't seem to be able to pick up any other radio signal. And it was a case of that a woman had worked for a large company, and she'd wanted, I think it was a full year's worth of maternity leave. She'd already had one kid, and the actual, and she'd taken maternity leave for that, and it turns out that all in all, for 2 years worth of work, she'd actually only been present in the office for about a month. So that's 1 month out of 24 months that she'd been present. The moment she'd come back to work, after 2 weeks, I think it was 2 weeks she was employed there, then she got pregnant, and then as far as I know, it was 2 weeks after the several, nearly nigh on a year's worth of pregnancy leave that she got pregnant again, and then wanted to have maternity leave, and the office turned around to her and said, very sorry, we can't afford to have you on, because in comparison, the amount of work you put in here is just ridiculous in comparison to the amount of work you've taken off and asked to be paid for taking time off. And her response to us, how dare they, that's discrimination. Well, let me put it to you. In this case, it was someone who'd done very little work but wanted all the benefits of someone who does a lot of work. And this is, unfortunately, the environment that a lot of us seem to be living in. We sort of always want something for nothing. And because I'm a self-employed man, I don't know anything about this. If I want money, I'll work for my money, and if I don't work, I don't get money. It's very simple. People employed in jobs, obviously, have got to have healthcare. They've got to have, insurance. Obviously, clock in, clock off. I can only dream of such a job, but I'll never be as good to do that kind of job. So, never mind. But this is the point I want to make. Everyone, and this is the point actually my friend made, and I want to quote him line for line, is that generally people want all the good bits of equality without wanting any of the bad bits about equality. It's obvious they don't want it, but they don't accept it should happen. So it's a case of, if a man was working in said same industry, said same kind of work environment, and say wanted paternity leave, and he only did in, say, 2 years a month's worth of work, and he did it twice, and he sort of said, I still want to be paid for taking time off, what good is he doing to the company? It's fair that they should get rid of him. If the fact of the matter is that if I said I was going to do loads of gigs, and I didn't turn up to one of them, or I turn up to one, say, in the space of a year, then they'd have a right to say, I'm sorry, we don't want to use you anymore. Just because, if I'd made that decision, I said, oh, I've got a kid, and, why should they keep me on? It's a nightmare. Anyone who says that it's discrimination has clearly never been the boss of anyone and never had to work things, because it loses money. And it's not just this, it's equality. Why does it always swing in two ways? It's that you want everything that equality gives you that is great, but you can't accept all the things that are bad about it. The fact that, equality means that if something happens bad to someone else, then I'm afraid it might well happen to you. It's like inclusion. You say you can't say that thing about that sector of society, or you cannot say this thing about that sector of gender. But if everyone wants equality, shouldn't someone be able to say anything about it? Because it's sort of like, welcome to the human race, welcome to the race of equality, welcome to the human race. If you want to be equal, you must accept that it's not a one-way street. You can't have one person can have a million things said about them but can never say anything back, which seems to be the way things are going at the moment. And you can't have one side of the argument, even though they're in the right, say that someone's been marginalised beforehand and is now not so marginalised, say a homosexual is no longer obviously to be discriminated against in work, because that's just unfair. Why should a gay or a lesbian person not be allowed to work in place of a straight person? I don't see any problem with that. But if they want special rights just because they're gay or lesbian, just above anyone else, how is that equality? or if you're of a different ethnic background, if you're, say, whether it's a religious thing or whether it's just something as simple as colour, which I don't honestly see has to make any difference for anyone. You know, justice should be blind. And this is the other point I'm coming on to, which I think is very important. Justice should be blind. Because what I heard about earlier, and this is two cases I'm going to highlight, is the case of Aso Mohammed Ibrahim, who was an illegal immigrant who came to the UK in 2001 on the back of a lorry. He was convicted of driving without a licence several times in around 2002 and then in early 2003. And in 2003, he ran over a 12-year-old girl in Blackburn. And he, according to all witness statements, he stayed in the car, got out, didn't bother to look at her, she was dying underneath the wheels, and walked away from the car. Didn't even think twice. And he was then convicted, but he wasn't convicted for manslaughter, he was convicted of driving without a licence. And since then, he's been convicted of, I've actually got the list here, it's drugs possession, burglary, harassment, criminal damage, and about one driving conviction for every year that he's been in this country. He's come over here from Iraq, in case he's Iraqi Kurd, and he is being excluded from deportation because in the time since this accident, he quickly got married and fathered 2 children. So, does it really take a genius to work out what he's done here? He knows that if he's got 2 kids, I bet you he knows that if he's got 2 kids, he cannot be deported. But what has he brought into this country? Where, if he says it's a breach of my human rights, where's this girl's human rights? Where's her father's human rights? He's got no other kids, his wife is unable to have any more kids, and he didn't get convicted for killing her. He took away a part of this man's life. But because he's thrown his children in the front, that makes it fine. His poor kids. I mean, this guy's poor kids. I mean, I think, personally, between you and me and the whole internet, fine, Ibrahim Mohammed, I think you're a real bastard. I think you're a scum of the earth. Because what you've done is you've exploited every single right that they've given you and you've not contributed anything. All you've done is break every law that this country is trying to uphold, and you seem to be exploiting it just because you say that you're hiding behind your children, and because of that, nothing can go on. Nothing can happen to you. I think that's personally absolutely disgraceful. It's disgusting. You know, it's just absolutely sickening what is going through your mind. Seriously, what is going through your mind? How do you think you can get away with this? Apparently, this man didn't even show any remorse afterwards. He didn't see anything wrong with the fact that he'd murdered and taken someone's human life. I, personally, of the mindset I can't understand that. And they're trying to over-peel it, but seriously, why do his children have to be used as a barrier? I personally, if he was to get deported, which he should do, and personally I think he'd go back to Iraq, that's too good for him. Either he should just go to prison. His kids, I'm more than happy that his kids would be taken into care because they've got nothing to do with it. They've been born of someone of not very good intent, but that doesn't mean that they're not very good intent. I'm perfectly happy for them to go into state care. They should get a good home. They should not be with this man. And that's that. That's an extreme abuse of human rights. Human rights. So someone who murders, consistently reoffends, shows no remorse for any of it, gets more human rights than someone whose daughter, was one and only child, was taken from him and simply wants to see justice done. How is that human rights? It's not. It's not human rights. It's bollocks, personally. It's bollocks. And I'm sorry that I'm maybe resorting to foul language, but I personally feel so very strongly about it. But on the other hand, in another case, there is a case of human rights being completely and utterly removed from anyone. And this is the case of, I don't know whether you followed it last year, where a young woman by the name of, she was Iranian, and she's called Sakina Mohammed Ashtiani. And she is being constantly convicted, and when I say constantly convicted, I mean the convictions have come left, right and centre for any reason for her that she could receive the death penalty. And the Iranian government, I don't know whether any of you know, but the Iranian government follows very strict Islamic beliefs. And the fact that women are considered to be very, very low in social stature, almost to the point of being second-class citizens. And that's one person's belief, that's one person, it's another person's belief. I don't believe that they are. I believe that they're equal to men in lots of ways and that they should be treated so. But they are constantly reopening any case, any flimsy case, and apparently when asked to give evidence, they will not give full evidence for this case. So the fact that she's been repeatedly opened up, she's been repeatedly subjected to people opening up and asking, that seems to be my timer is over, but she's been repeatedly subject to people trying to reopen a case for her to die just because she's a woman and that she's been convicted apparently for adultery, and then when they overturn the conviction for adultery because someone had apparently taken a picture of her without a shawl on, she was then convicted for indecency. And that they basically, what I can see here is that the Iran government is trying to open up as many cases just to get a woman stoned to death for the sake of setting an example to other women. That must be all it is. Why are they so fervently trying to kill this woman for any reason they can find? And the fact is, when people are asking them for evidence, the evidence is flimsy at best. It's disgraceful. She needs, she is a woman, she's a human being. She deserves freedom. She deserves not to live in an environment of fear. Neither do all the women of all these countries in the Middle East that follow Islamic law and get treated so badly. I mean, you have, absolutely 100% have my sympathy, because I really don't like the way that women are treated in these countries. I think it's absolutely abysmal. It's terrible. But of course, I don't believe that in the Western world that people, or say women or anyone of they feels they're of a marginalised sector of society, should take full advantage and not take any of the bad sides that come with wanting to be equal with others. And that's my blog over for today. That's equality, human rights, my opinion. I would tell you how I'm getting on with my book, The Stand, but unfortunately it seemed to get lost at a gig we did on, funnily enough, the New Year's gig. Didn't turn up in the dressing room. I was reading it to come back, not there, so I'll probably have to buy another copy of that. And that was shame. That was really good. But I tell you what I have bought, if I can recommend something to you this week, something to my recommendation of the week, the John Carpenter box set. Excellent director, and this is 7 of his DVDs, his best films from about 1976 to about 1988 and 1989. Excellent horror director and action director. He wrote most of the scores himself as well. And there's things like, let me just write, Halloween, Escape from New York, The Thing, The Fog, They Live, Assault on Precinct 30. Brilliant films, and that was 25 quid. And I think for 7 or 8 odd films, that's pretty good value for money. Unfortunately, my PlayStation has both etched massive grey cuts into both of them and ruined 2 discs. Escape from New York and Assault on Precinct 13, which is a bit of a bugger, so I'm going to have to get those replaced. And yeah, that's what's going on at the moment. So I'll be back soon, get more regular as the weeks go on. And I hope everyone stays well, and I hope everyone stays tuned. If you've got any ideas, send them to me and I'll see what I can do with them. I wish you all a very good evening, and this is Aussie C signing off. Have a safe night.